welcome back to the podcast. Today we have a very fun and special guest on, William Bolyard. He's the author of Silverman's Thoughts and Demons in the Taillights. He's a well-traveled adventurer who has been to 6 different continents on 36 countries. Bolyard served 11 years in the Army and is a combat veteran in Afghanistan. I'm really sorry if I'm butchering your name. He served in countless roles across his career, but served most of his time in the Army Reconnaissance Units. Bolyard has dog sled in the Arctic Circle. That's a big flex. Surfed big waves off the coast of Indonesia and hunted big game in southern Africa. Highly jealous of that. He now lives in West Virginia with his dog, Alistair Crowley. Will, thanks for coming on, bro.
No worries, man. I'm glad it could work out perfectly.
Oh, yeah, this works. This is great. I'm super pumped to have you on. Luke, you came suggested from Luke, and anybody that comes from Luke is definitely worth having on. So how do you pronounce your last name? Just so that the audience...
It's Bolyard.
Bolyard. Okay, so I wasn't too far off that.
No, it's fine. I'm used to it, man. It's a weird name.
Yeah.
People are like, is that French? I don't think so.
I don't think so. Yeah. So do you hail from West Virginia then originally?
Yeah, so I'm originally from West Virginia. Was there. I moved to Georgia when I was in high school, and then joined the Army out of Georgia. So, and then after that, it was just
awesome.
How it is.
Hell yeah, bro. So you joined the Army, like I said, for 11 years ago. We talked about you went in 2012. Infantry, 11 Bravo, as I think is what we talked about.
Infantry, know.
And then
I tried to enlist active duty, but I had priors because I was got caught with weed like a little shitbag kid I was. So I had to join the National Guard.
Yeah.
Because my recruiter lied about it, said I didn't have any charges. That guy got arrested for falsified enlistments. I got to stay in the Army, and I switched over to full-time Guard later down the road.
Oh, that's awesome, dude. Hey, you know what? Props. I mean, it sucks for the recruiter because he got. Did he get out and go to Leavenworth?
You're a real one, bro.
Yeah, right. Yeah, he's just making people's dreams come true. That's all.
Dude, he did.
Yeah, exactly. No, I agree, and that's what I mean. Like my brother had a rap sheet. It wasn't anything illegal they did, but back in 2006, he had. I think they got his 3 or 4 pages down to 1, which then you could waiver. That was back in 2006, though. So you could, they didn't give a shit back then. They're like, oh yeah,
2012, they were downsizing. So they were like, no way.
Yeah. That's awesome though. As a fellow guardsman myself, after my time in the Marines, it's a love-hate. Yeah. Well, you could do a lot, man. There's a lot, people shit on the Guard, but when I actually deployed in Afghanistan, and the National Guard guys, the Georgia boys, dude, they had done some hard deployments, and they were attached to us, and they were shit hot. They were great. I always say the discipline of the regulation is gone, but their skills on the guns and their skills on the mortar tubes were the best I've ever seen. Because, if you know how the Guard trains, it's you do a whole workup. So you're the freshest that you could ever be on your skills, and then you deploy. Active duty life, which I was, dude, we barely got to the sniper range. You know what I mean? I was stationed in Hawaii. We barely got to go shoot. It wasn't East West Coast guys at least got more time on, trigger time or CQB. It was always a pain in the ass for us to go do training because you'd have to go to another facility on the island, or it was a whole transportation thing. And so we were always doing glass houses and, fucking our barracks rooms and shit like that, So, but yeah, it was, the Guard guys, man, they can be really amazing assets. And then also too, at that time in the war, there's guys that stayed in Iraq and Afghanistan for years, just kept redeploying.
Dude, the Guard bus lifestyle is wild.
Yeah, it is, especially in the time of war. Dude, you could just get lost and just keep fighting. And, people were like, "Do you want to stay? Okay, cool, man, whatever." By the time I joined in 2013, it had calmed down. I was like, it was, but they have all sorts of options though. HUMIT, officer route. I ended up just getting out, but there's a lot of amazing opportunities for guys. I think, it's always, if you want to stay in, but you're, wanting to do a little bit more, AGR is, active, but even AGR, you can stay in your home state, it's a different life. You don't have to get pushed around by big Army or Marine Corps. and life is pretty good. My brother didn't know if he was going to end up staying in the Marine Corps, so he like walked over. He was a Marine recruiter, and then he didn't know if he was going to like pick up, right? So it was real shaky. So he like walked over to the Army recruiter and was like, "Yo, what can you guys do for me?" It was like 10 years ago. So he went to the Army recruiter, was like, "Hey man, like, is there like options for a former combat Marine, combat engineer, And they were like, "Yeah, man, if you need the hookup, we'll get you.
We'll do anything you want."
So I was like, yeah, exactly. Like, hey, but no, yeah, that's awesome, bro. So you went National Guard, and then Georgia deployed a lot. So did you get wrapped up into one of the Georgia units that were heading to Afghanistan?
Yeah.
Okay.
I deployed. Yeah, I did the Afghanistan deployments with them, and a bunch of like little training missions all over the globe because Georgia's fucking weird. They're like, "Oh, we're going to fucking go."
Yeah. Right? Georgia, it's like Georgia and like Pennsylvania, man. Like Minnesota didn't get shit. Like we had like Estonia once in a while. Like Georgia boys were like, yeah, we're just like going places. it's
Georgia Guard is wild.
That's cool.
Man. Like it is like the most wild organization ever.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, that's awesome. Yeah,
because then they have the Warrior Training Center down at Fort Moore now. They have that down there, and like everybody there is like Georgia Guard dude, and they're just like teaching whatever fucking schoolhouse. Because I was down there too.
Yeah.
I was Air Assault Black Hat, and you're on jump status. You're just school hopping. Then a deployment pops up, and you hop on that deployment, and you go away, and then you come back right after, and you go do whatever guard bum job you want.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I mean. Like, it's like, there's ways, I think once you get older, I was in active duty Marine Corps, and I got exposed to that on my third deployment, the whole National Guard stuff. Otherwise, if I would have never deployed or met those guys, I would have never known the amount of options that people have. You know what I mean? It's until you encounter it. Because I was like, oh, Marine Corps active duty, God, that's fucking sucks ass. There's no opportunity. There's no like cool. At that time, MARSOC was new, but like it's like I don't want to stay a Marine. Like the life is miserable, and there's no opportunity here. Like fuck this branch, I'm very prideful of being a Marine infantryman and scout sniper. But after that, it gets questionable. But yeah, I mean, the Guard and AGR, I had buddies on AGR here in Minnesota, so I became friends with a lot of Guard guys up here, and got a kind of a family of National Guard dudes that I'm real close with now, and all former, some active duty, and then guys that did the long deployments. Minnesota Guard had the longest on record. So we were the old timers, and so it was listening to their stories was pretty wild. But yeah, man, that's awesome. So then you did the AGR, you did a bunch of pumps with that, and what kind of you got out after 11 years? Like, why did you stay till 11 and cash out? Was there like a reason? Or you just
I got
like,
retired actually. So
oh, okay. Oh yeah. Hey, the good way to get out. Yeah.
Cool. I had a bunch of years in, I just got selected for 7 and I was like, man, this would be all right. But I fucking had this like weird fall when I was in Afghanistan and it never was right, And then I get back, COVID happens, we're doing whatever. I did the Southwest border mission down there on the border. I was like running, I was training like to go SFRE, all this other stuff. And like my leg just never felt good. Like something was wrong. I go to Benning, get on jump status. I'm jumping all the time. I'm doing Air Assault Black Hat stuff. So like I'm going through Air Assault school like every month with the students, it sucks. Yeah. And then I went and get an MRI done, and turns out I had like an impacted hip socket. I had like tore my labrums, my rotator cuff was torn, my bicep was torn, like my whole right side of my body was just ruined. And they're like, "Well, so long, partner." That was it.
That was it, man. Yeah, that's a common story,
combat-related injuries, which is a lot of fucking benefits if you don't know.
Before we keep going with the podcast, I want to drop this week's discount code for 9line Apparel. We're not just a brand, we're a lifestyle that celebrates the spirit of freedom, courage, and American values. Go check out our gear, including hoodies, glassware, flags, jackets, hats, patches, and much more. All material is ethically sourced, so every shirt you buy is free of slave labor. As a veteran-owned and operated company, we take pride in giving back to those who've served. Your purchase helps us contribute to charitable initiatives supporting veterans and first responders. This episode's discount code is DITT20. I say again, DITT20 for 20% off 9-line apparel products. Not 10, not 15, but 20%. Not 25, because that's a bit excessive. So go over to the store and get yourself 20% off your next purchase. While you're at it, like, listen, and subscribe to the 9-Line Apparel podcast for future discount codes and more conversations with amazing guests like today. Now back to the podcast.
Yeah. No, I've had a few people that I've known medically retired. So no, I understand. I've talked a lot about with buddies. So you get out, you are now writing for Dead Reckoning Collective. You're writing short stories, or you're writing, with your experiences. And so what's life like after that? I mean, except we'll jump into a bunch of your stories, but you went to Thailand, you're running around South Africa, you're hanging out with Hemingway's grandson, so I imagine you're maybe boxing with him. I don't know. Keeping that tradition alive, but
me and Pat have been friends for a couple of years, actually, because I was writing while I was on active duty. I wrote my first book while I was on active duty. It did okay, and I was like, okay, I kind of like this. I've always wanted to be a writer ever since I was younger. Pat bought my first book a long time ago. Me and him became, friends, and then, he's just a really good homie to me. And then, when I was getting out, I knew he was going to Africa on a safari hunt with field ESOs, and I was like, hey, like, are there any extra slots to go on this? And they're like, yeah, there is. He's like, if you want to go, like, I can make it happen. And I was like, okay, hit him up. It's not a free hunt. You got to pay for it. It's fucking expensive.
Yeah.
For anybody that wants to get safari hunting, it is not a cheap man's game. But I was a single E6, no big deal. And tons of disposable income.
So got that BH.
I took all the money out of my TSP, paid for the safari hunt, and then then I, went safari hunting down there. And I had this plan when I got out. I was like, I'm going to go to Africa, safari hunt, and I'm going to do a circumnavigation of the globe. And then I did it. I flew from Africa to Australia, Australia to Bali, and then from Bali to Vietnam, Thailand to Japan to China. I went to South Korea for like a day. And then from Japan to Norway to Sweden to France to Spain to Argentina. And then I flew home after that.
That's insanely sick, and I highly envious of that trip. That's insane. As a fellow adventurer myself, after I had gotten out, I never didn't circumnavigate the globe, but that's something when you are a single man, or at least with no attachments. That's awesome, and those experiences that you get going to other places in the world it's unmatched. And like I said, I didn't go and do what you did. I backpacked through Central America, and the experiences you get, man, it's phenomenal. Even if you go to like Europe or something, like it's just like getting that life experience is insane. So what was that like then going to, we'll start with the African hunt, which is, it's funny you bring that up. It's not it's a rich man's game, but when I was a contractor, we have a bunch of money that we just sit around and look at the internet. So, you get like 15 grand deposited in your bank account every month, and you're just like, what am I going to do with it? And you're just sitting there not doing shit. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. And so, and I was looking at big game hunting because that got brought up. Like they were like, oh, let's go climb Kilimanjaro. Let's go do this, whatever. And I remember going down the rabbit hole of big game hunting, and it was like nuts, dude. I don't remember, it was like the tags for like, I don't know, they were between like $5,000 to $7,000 all the way up to like $40,000 for I'm sure it's maybe even more now. I don't know. I'm sure it's more. Like they were like, you can shoot an elephant. I'm like, you can shoot elephants? And they're like, yeah, it's like 40 grand. Or you can hunt a lion, and it's like, oh my God, and it's a whole industry. And obviously the site we were going through was like a legitimate, whatever you call it, like a game reserve. So everything goes back to helping maintain, so you're paying to help maintain that, the ecosystem and, species and all that stuff. So, it's like that double-edged sword. I know, they always talk about, especially in Africa, Like it's like, yeah, you're hunting maybe an elephant or a lion, but that money goes right back into helping the habitats and making sure the population stays, and keeps poachers out and all sorts of other shit. So what was that experience like then? So.
Yeah. So for all the listeners out there, yeah. So and the thing when you're shooting these animals, you're shooting usually older males. You never shoot young males because you shoot them once they're past their breeding peak. Because I'm not an outdoorsman, really, never really have been. But I've always wanted to do it. I love, Green Hills of Africa, Death in the Tall Grass. I love Wilbur Smith novels. So it's something I've always been really interested in. But, being in the Army, you understand it, being in a scout sniper unit. I was in, those battalion scout platoons, like very, lots of time crawling around, looking at things through glass. It feels like hunting and it's very boring, So I go to Africa on this long flight from Cape Town and really didn't know what to expect. Everybody's like wearing like hunting clothes and shit. I'm wearing like a Dale Earnhardt t-shirt and we'd show up there and like, everybody, this isn't their first rodeo and I'm outside my tax bracket, These like doctors, real estate moguls, and it was done through this organization called Crusader Safaris. And if you're interested in this stuff, they're super great. They have free drinks. That's pretty cool. Drink as much as you want.
Yeah.
I expected like the super
I hope
serious.
so with probably the price tag.
Yeah, man. I'm like, well, you got to get your money's worth. I worked out the math. You have to drink, at least like 200 beers a day to make it worth it. So
Yeah.
So you got to work at that. You wake up, you got to start drinking beer, which sounds unsafe.
Got it.
But just being a dick about it, whatever. It's not America. There's no rules. So we show up there and we go to the range. Everybody's grabbing. They have a bunch of the Q tactical guns, like those, 8 whatever guns. So they're like, hey,
I understand. Yeah.
I was like 300 Win Mag. It's like the only thing I really know how to use. Because battalion scout platoons, they always cross train with the snipers. 300 Win Mag's a fucking laser beam.
Yep.
It's a guarantee.
Yep.
So we go, we shoot. I haven't shot a gun in years. Like I've been in TRADOC just teaching bullshit. Fire my first round. Just throw it. Just gone. I was like, oh damn it! Now I look like a real idiot. I'm like the Army guy here, And
yeah.
I go. Second shot, bam, hit it. And I was like, all right, maybe I'm not dumb. Second shot, hit it. He's like, all right, we're good to go. Let's go hunting. And I was like, I just got here. He's like, yeah, you're good. I'm wearing like a camel tank top, like camel cigarette tank top and like zipper pants. We ride up to this ridgeline. We're looking around. It's like me, 2 local. So you go with a professional hunter. And that's like his whole job. He's like, you have to get licensed. It's like, but he's not a guide. He's a professional hunter. But you have trackers with you who are like local tribesmen. And those guys are awesome. You give them a carton of cigarettes. They're like, fucking, this guy's the coolest. And you just get to chain smoke cigarettes and drink beer with them. It's pretty fun.
That's awesome.
So we're riding around, riding a Toyota Hilux. And I asked my PH, I was like, hey, is it cool if I smoke in here? And he's like, oh, thank God, I'm used to all these, super rich clients. I fucking love smoking cigarettes. And I was like, oh, hell yeah, dude. I was like, yo, you mind if I drink? And he's like, dude, crack a beer, man. It's your hunt. Do whatever you want. So we're just like cracking beers, and we're riding up in this ridgeline. He's like, stops the car. He's like, yo, you see that up there? And I was like, I don't see fucking shit. I don't see nothing.
Yeah.
We get out of the car, we're low crawling, go down this like ravine, sit up there. We get in the prone. He's like, has his big binos out. He's like, yo, you see that? You see this thing? It looks like a rock. It's got big, long antlers. I was like, maybe? He's like, shoot that thing. And I was like, what is it? He's like, just shoot it. It's freaking really important. Shoot it. And I was like, fucking fine, man. 300-meter shot. This thing's like the size of a fucking dog, man. I hit it with a 300 Win Mag in the back. Just fucking boof. Gone, dude. Well, we come down and get it, and it's the size of a fucking dog. And I was like, I don't know how I feel about this. I don't even know what it is. He's like, this is a trophy-size veil buck. This is a big fucking deal. And I'm like, okay, maybe it is. The trackers all give me fucking high fives. They're like, oh man, like everybody's excited. We go back to the lodge. Everybody's excited. The safari group guys, all the hunters, Pat comes over and he's like, holy shit, you shot a veil buck. That's amazing. I was like, is it? He's like, no, this is a trophy size. This is a big deal. Everybody's talking about it. Like, guys are coming back with like kudus and freaking, buffalo, like really impressive game. And everybody's talking about this small little dog-sized animal. Turns out, they don't get that big. They're supposed to be tiny animals. And if you see one that's dog size and has like 24-inch antlers, that's a trophy size. It was the biggest one they ever saw.
Oh, wow.
I had no idea what it was. Yeah.
That's awesome. They just like fish out of water slightly, and you're like, all right, I'll fucking kill it. And then you do, you're like, this is the biggest game we've ever. Yeah, this is a trophy.
You have no idea.
Yeah, dude, that's awesome. So then, on that safari, then like, what was your guys' kind of like? Did you go out and hunt more?
Oh yeah. So it's like a week.
What was that whole
hunt.
experience like? How long were you there? Okay.
So I was there a week. Did a week-long hunt. So it's very laid back. It's not like hunting out in Montana. It's not like deer hunting. You wake up at whatever time you want to wake up. I would wake up early. We'd hit the ground running at like 6. That's the best time to get some game out there. I ended up shooting a big kudu. But like some days you don't get anything. Like the day I got this kudu, it's pretty rough hunting. Like you are up and down the mountains all day. You're, hiking all day. You're scouting animals. You're like planting stalks on animals, like to try to get as close as you can to them. And like some days, like I woke up one morning, I chased these herd of kudu up a mountain, try to get a good shot on them. They were gone. And there was like this giant bush buck there. We shot him. And then while we're cleaning him up, we look down into the valley. There's a giant herd of impala with a giant impala with them. So then we go down the mountain, stalk through these ravines and these big thorn bushes, get up in there, shoot him, which was a really great shot. Like I thought it was my best shot I've ever made. Like 300 meters, he was on the run, shot him right in the ass, blew out through his chest. I was like, I still got it, baby.
Wow. Yeah, the skills are there. Yeah.
I was like, I knew I wasn't dumb. And then while we're like cleaning him, we see the herd of kudu up on the hill, and we stalk those bastards for 6 hours, and then finally make our approach up like 2 fucking mountains, like high elevation gain, and then make a shot on him from like 400 meters. Like, and that's just one day.
Yeah,
and I was tired.
That's awesome. And that's that 300 Win Mag. You talk about that because I was in 2005, 2009. So we had heard about the 300 Win Mags being awesome. The SEALs were using them, and we'd heard how laser beams they were. We had the 308s, but it's funny. You're like, 100, 300. I'm like, oh my god, dude, that's like you don't even have to like apply the basics. You just fucking point and shoot. That's awesome.
I mean, I think
there's no ballistics.
Years one time. And my PH is like, can you make that shot? I was like, it's a 300 Win Mag, man. I think I just have to hold the classic, hold half mil left. It's going to hit no matter what.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You're like, I'll just do this standing, like that. It's just, that's awesome though. Yeah. Cause there's like just certain shots. So it's like, 200 yards. Like, yeah, man, I'll just fucking stand up and shoot. Like, but that's sick though. So then you got a bunch of game and, did you make a lot of connections? Like you said, you went with, your buddy, and when you decided that, you're like, hey, I'm just going to fucking rock and roll and do this, circumnavigate the globe.
I'm just going to keep going.
Did anybody like just keep going? Yeah. And what, did you meet any fun characters on that hunt? Cause I imagine, like you said, you run into like a lot of rich people, but it's like, were they cool? Were they dickheads? Were they, guys that just want to get away from it and be like, we're just going to hunt some big ass game?
I mean, most of them are pretty cool, there's like, it's a different crowd, you're never going to be, there's some guys that's like not the first rodeo. There's only like one guy I didn't like. He was like this real estate dude. But I don't want to get too into it because he might listen because fuck that guy, but whatever. He gets.
But he's
he was there. He was like our age, kind of a younger dude in his 30s. And he was like, yeah, I live in Vietnam.
Mhm.
And I was like, what do you mean you live in Vietnam? I was like, are you in the fucking CIA? And he's like, yeah, I speak Mandarin,
yeah.
but no, I'm not in the CIA. I was like, you got to fucking tell me if you're a cop, bro. Like, it's the rules. So I ended up talking to him. He's like, no, dude, come to Vietnam. And I was like, well, I'm heading that way anyways. Why not? So I meet up with him in Vietnam. He's been living there for a couple months. And, I think he works in like some furniture business or something like that. We're hanging out. And like, as soon as I show up, we like fly in the same day. He was flying from like Thailand or something. Meet up with him.
Mm-hmm.
We hit the bars immediately, going down downtown, Ho Chi Minh, formerly Saigon. And it's just as fun as you think it is. Cheap dollar, 50-cent beers, we're going to like the really, really nice places and we're not paying nothing. Like, so I ended up staying in Vietnam for a month. I rented an apartment for $400 a month. We would just go out every night. I think I was editing Demons in the Taillights at the time when I was over there, and I was writing some short stories. A couple that are based on, my trips out in Asia. Yeah. But it was awesome. And there's tons of expats out there, tons of Americans. Like, you don't have to speak any bit of Vietnamese. You're going to find tons of people who speak English. And it was so much fun. We ended up riding motorcycles through the Mekong Delta. I crashed a motorcycle in the Mekong Delta because I don't know how to ride a motorcycle. That was a pretty funny story. Yeah. I told my buddy I wanted to go ride motorcycles. He's ridden motorcycles before. He's like, oh, dude, we're going to do it in Vietnam. It's going to be so cool. We're like in the Kai up in Africa, like drinking all night. We're shooting animals and we're like drunk talking to each other. You know how guys are. He's like, bro, when you come to Vietnam, we're going to ride motorcycles. I was like, I don't know how to ride a motorcycle. He's like, there's no cooler place to learn. Fast forward a month and a half. We show up at this like random place out in the middle of Vietnam, and he's talking to the guy who owns the motorcycles. They're like old 70s like Honda CB motorcycles, super cool, And he's like, hey, like the guy gives us helmets. He's like, all right, we're ready to ride. And I was like, I've never ridden a motorcycle a day in my life, ever. Yeah. And he's like, all right, let's go. And he talks to the guy. He's like, hey, just quick refresher, And he's like, oh, okay. Clutch on left. Go on right, brake at feet. Good to go? And I was like, good to go, I guess. So take off. I have really I'm good at, going, but stopping, changing gears. I can drive a manual, so I'm not like a complete sissy. But but it's a little difficult. So we're riding on these roads that are smaller than a sidewalk. We're talking like maybe 2 meters wide. And it's like just water on each side, like big rice paddies. And I'm having a lot of trouble. So finally, like, I stall out. We're having trouble. I'm having trouble like restarting the bike. The guy comes back. He's like, are you okay? And I was like, I'll be honest with you. The jig is up. I don't know how to ride a motorcycle. And he's like, oh, okay. We'll go to main road then. I was like, that's awesome. We go to the main road, and then we're riding on and off these like barges, like crossing the Mekong River. It's really cool. Like, I felt like I was in Apocalypse Now, super. It was super amazing. And then we're riding back, and we have to go back down these little small roads. And there's a 90-degree turn. So I hit the brake, let off the gas. Apparently you need gas to turn. Didn't know that. I just go straight off the bridge into the river. Just like crash. Just ride it all the way down. I don't jump down. I don't do nothing. So a bunch of locals come out, and they're like laughing at me. And I was like, fair. I get that. I earned that. And they're like, oh, no, it happens all the time. I was like, why don't you guys fix this? They're like, fucking who cares? Be a better driver. And I'm like, fair enough. So then me and all the locals were like, have ropes on this motorcycle, pulling it out of the river. We pull it out the river, shoot up to the place we were staying at, drain the gas, change the oil, thing fired right up.
That's awesome. See, and that's the thing. That was one of my buddy of mine. I served in Afghanistan. He was in the French army. He's Vietnamese, but he spoke like perfect English. But he lived in France. But he did that. He motorcycled. This is after we had gotten out. So I got out in like 2009. I saw he did this. He did from North to South Vietnam, on a motorcycle and like took photos and all this other stuff. And I was like, God damn, it's great. I rode motorcycles in high school. So I do miss riding motorcycles. That was one thing. I was kind of like during my travels, I'm like, okay, I'm backpacking. I was like, God, I would love to do a motorcycle trip. That's like one of those ones where it's like, man, that'd be fucking awesome. Riding across Europe or even riding in Africa and, doing, the long way down shit, and I'd be like, oh man. And I was looking at enduros, like the whole trip, and that stuff's fucking amazing. So when you're doing that and you're right, so is that something that, like I said, you got out, you're circumnavigating the globe? Like, obviously these are amazing stories. So does that just kind of fuel your passion to keep writing? Is that just kind of feeding the beast where you're like, this is fucking amazing? It's like you're kind of creating, the story yourself, you're living that life. And we say that like in filmmaking, like the guys that you have to like live life to actually know how to like write or come up with a story, or, you know what I mean? Like when I went to film school and I was writing screenplays, like I could at least draw from my experience, not just military, but from traveling. Like I was sitting down and drinking with professors in Boca del Toro, and it was nuts because we had these Israelis there. We were just talking geopolitics very calmly. This is 2012, and we're sitting there having beers, and it's just one of the best conversations I ever had. It was a professor from University of Washington, and we were just having beers, and like the Israelis and a bunch of backpackers gathered around us. We talked for like 4 or 5 hours. It was like podcasting before podcasting. And we just sat there and talked and had a great conversation on geopolitics, warfare, Central American geopolitics as well as Middle Eastern. And it was just a great dude. It was just like, especially back then, those kind of opportunities just never came about, and you're meeting somebody halfway across the world, So is that something then for you? Like I said, you're writing, because now, you're writing, you're a writer. How much does that help
I think
putting the pen to paper?
Well, I kind of refer to it as like I'm always doing research, and my research, takes me to surfing in, Bali, or, dog sledding in Norway, or hunting in Africa, or, backpacking Europe, or almost getting arrested in a casino in South America. It's all research, and it's all something you can, go back and pull on. And I like to write books that I like to read. I like, Wilbur Smith. I like Clive Cussler. I like Nick Hornby, obviously Ernest Hemingway. And those books that I've always really appreciated, it's very realistic in its emotion. Like you can tell there's something that author has gone through that he can draw back on. Even if he didn't live in the 1930s or go safari hunting with, the Roosevelts, the emotion you could feel between one man to another when they're just talking about, living under their father or trying to make their father proud or something like that. You could tell that there's some real life aspect of that. And I feel like if you can do that as an author, then you can probably go the distance. So for me, I like to write just pure fiction, just something that's fun, that's enjoyable to read, but I want to write it in a simple way that, a kid in the 8th grade could pick up my book, read it, and understand some stuff or have a good time in the same way that a 35-year-old guy going through a divorce can read a book and be like, oh my God, like I understand this. I feel this, and I think I just do that. Yeah. I like it.
Yeah, no. And I agree with you too. I think that's some things that, when you're translating that into your books, or like I said, I do some with myself, translating that into filmmaking or screenwriting, like it does feel like when you've lived that experience, there's those small nuances that separates you from everyone else. Like, I was in high school and I'd write, it was the shittiest write because you have no life experience. Like I never was at the top of a mountain in, drinking chai with, my Afghans in high school. You could never write that scene properly unless you've done it, and I remember writing a small little scene. They're like, hey, just write this scene. No words, it was all details, like a writing exercise for screenwriting. And I wrote it, and the class read it. They like put on, and everyone's like, one guy in the room was like, yeah, someone like, he's like, that's real. That's fucking real. The little details of the, like you said, it's cold, so the tea is hot, and the sun's hitting, backlighting, the the heat coming off the tea. You know what I mean? Like that little, just a little bit of,
that morning mist,
haze and yeah, exact morning mist. And on top of that, you're drinking, you can see the heat rise from your coffee mug, and so it's just like those small nuances are like those little bits of pain, like I said, you've been deployed, but going through your experiences though too, like I even draw from the, going through and meeting people abroad, and hanging out with them and partying with you just got to get out in the world, and
I get a lot
like
of my
I like how you said it, like, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because you run into some wild motherfuckers, man. Like I've been there too. Like you're just like, this dude's insane, or like, wow, this is wild. These are. I met a German. I can't remember his name. We met him in Guatemala. He was like in his 50s, man, and he was just a fucking weirdo, but he was fun. He was just he had like a thick German accent, all these piercings. We went through a bat cave with him, or this cave, which there's no safety. You fall, they're like, you're gone, homie. But it was like a tourist thing, so they kind of had a path, kind of not.
I think I know exactly what you're talking about.
Exactly. Yeah. So we're like going through it, and this guy's shaking, so he's just like shaking, but he's trying to hang out with like these 20-year-old backpackers, and I was like, hey man, are you okay? Like, you all right? Like, I'll help you through here. And he's like, oh, I'm good, but he was he was crazy weirdo. And then even the people that were at the hostel were like, yeah, man, he's fucking out there, So, but yeah, man, it's the type of people you meet, especially the writing, like when you get into those details, when you get into those smells, you get into those sights, you get into what you hear, what's it like, people can read that and they'll go kind of experience that. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of like, if you're in a trench and you're getting pissed on and you can translate that feeling and that how cold it is, how shitty it is, what you feel like, what you're thinking, like people read that and they'll refer back to that writing, they'll refer back to that. And but then, like I said, that also propels your work. Like, this is real. This isn't some, Hollywood writer trying to relate to some fucking kid somewhere in the middle of nowhere. Like you kind of have to live that life, in order to get that, to put it pen to paper. And, that's cool. Like I said, you're writing these stories and with these experiences, I imagine that you have kind of like, so you write nonfiction. Are you doing nonfiction? I'm sorry, you're writing fiction. Are you writing short stories fiction then? Kind of just like, do they have their own themes, or what's your process in saying, I'm going to write, this is my story structure, this is what I want to write about?
Man, that's a tough one. So there is no theme. I think a short story collection. So I recently finished a short story collection. My book that's coming out now, it'll be out the 24th. It's a poetry collection, but it's pretty artistic. It's more of a like, I wanted to make it like a journal essentially through that, and it's part fiction, part nonfiction. Poetry is a beautiful thing. You can do whatever you want with it. And I really like it. I thought it was cool, but it's definitely very out there. I think I wrote it under a really dark time in my life. 2 bad breakups and getting medically retired from the Army. Kind of makes you question your life, a lot. And I think, I think I kind of wrote it as, the world was kind of going through a bad time, it was post-COVID, I described it as my post-COVID book, everybody's depressed, everybody's upset, internet dating, politics, the economy was going down the shitter. And I just wanted to write it as like a kind of how we got here. Like, and I started going to therapy, all this other stuff. And, I was just, going through it. I was just going through it, just like a lot of other people were going through it. And my whole plan was with the book. I was like, I was doing a lot of psychedelics too, which doesn't help. I'm out of the Army now, so sorry, Sergeant Major, if you're listening to this. I was fucking doing tons of mushrooms. Just doing high. And, I tell people all the time when they're talking about this, and they're like, oh, I'm thinking about doing a psychedelic treatment for PTSD. And I'm like, you shouldn't. And they're like, why? And I was like, you ever done a lot of mushrooms? It's not really that fun, man. Like, it's kind of bad for you. You want to have every bad thought you've ever had ever? Not cool, for a kid.
Yeah. And
it's like a whole book, like in that mind state. My whole plan was literally just write this book and just kill myself, and then that seemed like a bad idea after I got just stop doing mushrooms and drinking all the time, you know?
That's a good outcome. Like, yeah, I thought that was a bad idea. So,
Yeah,
you
it
know,
seemed like a
obviously
bad idea. I
glad
was
you
like,
didn't,
damn, you know
you
what's
know.
really cool?
Yeah,
Being
yeah.
alive. You know?
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
That's a pretty sweet thing to be doing. So then
being
when
alive
you're writing
is
that book, you're writing, yeah. And so did you went through all this stuff and then was this prior to your trip then? Going to
yeah, it
Africa,
was
going
prior
to,
to my
yeah.
trip. Yeah, so I wrote
Mhm.
this book actually like 3 years ago, 2021.
Okay.
Right after
Okay.
I started writing it in 2021 and I finished writing it in 2022.
Mhm.
You know, kind of got all that together, and I sat on it for a long time. I sent it to my publisher. They read it, and it was originally, so it's kind of a long book. It's 265 pages
Mhm.
right now, but it was originally like
Damn.
310. My publisher reads it and is like, "This is fucking madness, dude. This is like some real crazy shit." And I was like, "I was going through it, man." And he's like, "Dude, this is we're gonna have to look over this for a while." So we start the editing process, and for anyone who doesn't really understand like the writing process, so when you write a book, it's usually not going to get published until like 2 years after you finish writing it. Your first draft means nothing. Uh, Editing takes a long time. You and your editor have to go through and fight, and because there's some things I really like that I want to keep, and some things my editors are like, "This is the stupidest thing I've ever read in my life." I was like, "No, it has meaning, man." And he's like, "You were fucking high when you wrote that. That does not count." We're cutting that.
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
like, "You don't get it." He's like, "Shut up, dude. Like, someone has to understand this." And when you're really passionate about a project, like I was with this book, you gotta. I kind of looked at this book as my last big experimentation with like an artistic form. Like I designed the cover on this. I took the photo. Like there's nothing in this book that isn't planned. And
Yeah.
I didn't want to write poetry anymore. I was already writing short story fictions, like based on like travel, adventuring, the stuff I've always wanted to write.
Mm-hmm.
But I had to get through my own bullshit to get to where I wanted to be. So this is kind of what that book stands as.
Mm-hmm.
It's fun.
That's good to know. That's awesome. That's awesome. That's a great, like I said, that's the beginning to end. Like that's an awesome, I don't want to say it's not a barrier, but it's definitely getting that out of the way. It's like definitely say, hey, we're doing this, we're writing this, and now you're moving on. And so you're doing the fiction route then, going on all these trips. And like I said, you get past that. And I kind of agree with you too, the psychedelic aspect of it. Like I in some, running in some of these influencer circles, or you kind of see that with like the veteran circle, like that's becoming more popular. And I don't mind. I think it's I'm glad people are advocating for it because I think some people do need it. And I like how you brought up though, it's not for everybody. And I think it's not for a lot of people. I think because I remember because I've done some gummies and stuff like that to help with my shit, but mostly to help bring my tension down. And I've taken some wrong ones, and I don't fucking like that at all. Like there was one that was just like, again, like bad thoughts, nothing terrible, but it's like, this is not, I've taken some that are really relaxing, but then they threw me into a panic attack. And there's only one time that I've done it where it did what it needed to do, which was like, just calm me down. And I went to bed and I woke up clear headed. Like that's all I want. I'm not here to fucking trip balls and, meet God. Like it's I feel like, and a lot of veterans I think are that way, where it's kind of like, well, Joe Rogan's talk about ayahuasca and some of these Navy SEALs are trying to take it. And I know guys that have done it and they say it helps greatly. And so like, some of the Ibogaines, but I think it's being a little too, it should be your absolute last fucking resort for some of these, the extreme cases. But sometimes when people are just doing it recreationally, like it's cool. Like I get it. I think I'm sure some people find it fun, but for guys that are trying to, I think there's I don't think it's as needed as some people describe it to be, especially if you don't know how your brain's going to react. Like some people have mental breakdowns and that's not where you want to go, if you're trying to fix yourself, and go on a bad trip, especially with me, like going on like some of these gummies, like it's not even that high milligrams, but it's like I clearly don't do it, very often. And if it throws you into bad shit, like don't keep doing it, thinking that you're going to get another, another hit at it or something. It's just like, especially with your mind, man, you don't want to break that. You've already been through enough
No,
where
dude.
it's
Like,
it's
I,
not good
I'm
for you. You know.
Yeah, I mean, I agree the same way. Like when I was doing my own, because like it's kind of hard to kind of accept that you need like to probably change your life patterns or you're gonna self destruct.
Mhm.
And like being an artist, like you get it. Like part of you wants to self
Mhm.
destruct. That's the business, baby. That's the secret sauce.
Mhm.
And but then you
Yeah.
realize this is reality. This isn't a fucking Hunter S. Thompson book. You probably need to stick around for a little
Mhm.
bit and stop being dumb. And yeah, I think it's very strange, especially in like the veteran world. And like, I'll admit, yes, there are some people that probably 100% need that, but it's not a one size fit all for mental health treatment.
Exactly.
Therapy,
Yep.
if you go to therapy for a year, it is fucking crazy what you will do. If you're really self aware and you understand your problems, then you got to go do some other stuff. I don't think antidepressants are the way to go, really, ever. But you could do outdoor therapy. Go fly fishing. I've recently gotten to fly fishing. It's awesome. I'm terrible at fly fishing. I don't care. I'm just standing in the river,
Yep.
waving a fucking stick around. I'm like, this is nice, Uh,
Mhm.
or you could just go hiking, get a cat. There's tons of other things than going down to South America and doing ayahuasca. I don't think you should do that.
Yeah.
Maybe just change your
Yep.
job. It's crazy,
Yeah.
like the simplest steps, For a lot of veterans, it's like our issues are we get out, we have these like past traumatic experiences, but really we kind of fucking liked it. The war is kind of fucking fun, but then you have like
Yeah.
problems with your job, problems with, a relationship, and those compact over and over again and make a much bigger issue. And really the solution might be just quit your fucking job and go get a new job, Maybe don't date this toxic girl you've been dating for the past 5 or 6 years. Maybe she's bad. Crazy concept, Maybe go to church.
Yeah. No.
And I think it's very strange how like it's so counterculture now that it's become normal, and the counterculture now is just seeking traditional treatment. That's fucking weird to me.
Yeah. Yeah, and I agree with you. I think that's what I identified when I was getting out was I knew I needed to be a part of the community, but I needed to be distanced from the military. Like chasing the high, getting paid, but also just being able to relax and go home. Like I can make 40 grand and I can just chill out for the rest of the year. I'm not making 160, but it self-sustains me. Be around your friends. Travel was big. Like that's why I liked when you said you went on that, you circumnavigated the globe. I advocated a lot after I got out. I was like, dude, just go backpacking. Just get the fuck out of your town. Like just get out. Like experience something new. And even with like therapy, some people with therapy, like I don't know if I'm good at it. I don't know if I'm built for that one either. My wife was always trying to get me to go to therapy, and I've done a few like with the VA, like going through your ratings and everything like that. But it sometimes, and I knew this from a long time, I just wanted to be around my buddies to talk about the stories and then do new experiences. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and then always kind of be a part of the fight in some sense, like always having just a you don't want to feel useless. And I think that's what a lot of veterans kind of ran into, especially in the early years. I feel like now I'm working with guys, 15 years later. I got out in 2009, and 2000 or 22 from the Guard, but 2009 from the Marine Corps. But that feeling of just, for at least for me, that's what helps is like still having your one foot in, or at least dipping your toe in every once in a while. That does help a lot. That does, feel like I don't want to say that you're worth something, but you're doing something. I think a lot of times guys, you feel like you get left behind. You get out of the military, and, I got out in 2009 and I wanted to go back because I wanted to help, but maybe you need to help in another way. Maybe you need to be the civilian on the other side, helping with metal detectors. I did that, so I'm still in the fight, but I'm making really good money and I can leave. And it's almost like this, like, it was like a transitioning period for me. It like helped ease me out of it, but I'm still a part of it. I think a lot of guys, especially in my generation that got out in 2008, 2009, dude, I had guys that just like went to college and they're like, I can't fucking do this, man. Like, I can't fucking do this, and college is easy. I got 2 degrees, it's easy. But if it's just like, you don't feel like you're accomplishing much. Like I remember thinking, I could go to college for 4 years, but I literally went, that's a waste of my time. Like to stay at the U of M and party for 4 years I can party anywhere in the world. I can, I don't need to stay here for 4 years to get this piece of paper. I can
Yeah.
go online and go work overseas or do whatever. And I agree with you. I don't think there's a one size fits all for everybody. And I kind of have identified that, but I agree with you. I think it's kind of coming around to being like, dude, why don't you go hit the gym? Why don't you maybe find another career path? Maybe, you know what I mean? Like get back on the horse a little bit. Maybe, yeah, go out and have an adventure. Like it's okay. Like I do scuba diving a lot more now. And other guys go hunting. Other guys do, some guys are busted, so they can't really do hunting a lot. But, we do the scuba diving, but it's just something like, and I think you have an advantage. And I did too when I got out, which is I wasn't married. I was single and I could take off on a dime and go backpacking. But I think that's something that even if you do have a family, like go on a vacation or go somewhere, just kind of get away, man.
And you can explain to your
I agree
partner
with you.
that,
And I think,
I need this. I need a little,
Yeah.
Get some buddies. I think
Yeah.
not to sound like a fucking Toy Story plot, but the power of friendship is pretty cool, man. Like if you just have a couple fucking
Yeah,
buddies
absolutely.
that you can talk to, and that's the whole reason the VFW was started. Get a couple
Exactly,
friends.
exactly.
Join. I'm part of this organization, Project Healing Waters. I meet once a month with a couple other veterans, and we fly fish or just talk about fly fishing. I don't like everybody there because it's a lot of old dudes, but I met one good guy. When I was in college, I was part of
Yeah.
the Student Veterans Association. I met one guy in that organization that has become one of my closest friends of all time. I never served a day in the Army with him. We served in the same timelines of life,
Yep.
but we've experienced the same struggles of going through, getting out, doing all this other stuff. And we kind of lean on each other. And I just call, I'm driving, taking a long drive somewhere. I just call and talk to him, and
Yeah.
just it's the same thing. Everybody always talks like, oh, call your buddies. Well, sometimes your buddies you serve with turn out to be fucking pieces of shit, and you shouldn't really talk to them anymore. Surround yourself with people you want to be with. There's tons of dudes I serve with that I will never speak to again, and that's just the way it is. You can't save everybody. Grab you a close group of fucking friends and ride till you die, man. That's the secret to happiness.
Yeah,
It's crazy.
yeah. No, I agree with you too. And that's the thing. I talk with the guys that I'm real close with all the time. And or you hit them up and whatnot. But I agree with you. I think that is something, like I said, going out and experiencing those things or finding that talking, and it's just sometimes you just got to go. Sometimes you just got to. I think maybe accomplishing things too. I think coming out as a veteran. And it doesn't mean that you have to go break world records, but I think you need to go. Like I liked how you went dog sledding in the Arctic. Like it's like I went scuba diving in Iceland. So it's just go and accomplish things that normal people don't do. It's just like go and do the things that normally people don't do, and that is maybe just backpacking through Central America. Maybe that is just flying into Panama or whatever, or going to South Africa. And people are like, well, it's expensive. It's like, well, not really if you work it out right. And obviously that's probably for the younger single dudes that are getting out trying to find some meaning or just trying to find something to help them, and just continuing on with life. Like you got this far. Now, what are you going to do with it? And that was my mentality of, I lived, I got out alive. I didn't think I would, I was on 3 deployments, 2 wars. And it's like one of those things where like, okay, you earned it, you're in life. Now, what are you going to do with it? And so that was always my mentality, especially after I got out, but also going into places where I was like, I always told myself, you've done a lot of things, but you're going to have to keep earning. Every time you go somewhere new, you got to earn that trust. You got to earn that. You just can't walk around and expect people to hand you things. And so it was, to continue on. And like I said, you don't have to accomplish, like I said, conquering the world or starting $1 billion company. Just going and experiencing new things in life. I feel like that's a big thing for veterans to do after they get out, immediately get out. But then, like I said, like what you're saying, I agree with you, keep in touch with good, close friends or find new close friends and go experience things, man. Like I said, you don't have to do huge scuba trips every year, or you don't have to do that, but just finding a community within your community and just talking about stuff, man. And I found real close friends in the National Guard, you find your little clique and it's nice too, because you live in the same state. So we keep in contact. We see each other all the time, and that's nice. That's what I did like about the Guard was like, you find your little clique in the Guard, but then it's like, dude, we can hang out beyond that. What sucks is when you get off of active duty and everyone spreads to the winds. I was stationed out in Hawaii. So, and my buddies were East Coasters, West, they're everywhere, And my wife always kind of says that too. Some of the guys I'm still very close with, it's like, I didn't go to college here where I have a friend group of like 20 guys that I hung out with. Like, all my friends are all over the world. I mean, we went to Italy to go to a wedding, and she's like, oh my God, all these people. It's like, yeah. And then, they're coming from France. Flew to Norway because I met he's a good friend of mine. He's out of Norway now. We met in Ukraine. We went to Norway for the weekend. It's kind of just making those connections. I think that's huge, yeah. I agree with you.
No, it's
I agree with you on those
simple
fronts.
things of life, And
Yeah.
if you want to make a big adventure, your big adventure might not be dog sledding in the Arctic Circle. It could be, just go to a rock climbing class.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty cool. I like rock climbing. I'm a big mountaineer. I went to the Army's mountaineering course, graduated that, and I really got into rock climbing after that. I love it. It's super cool. You can go to a local rock climbing gym and just meet people there. It's yeah, but yeah, essentially that's kind of the whole theme of my next book is just everybody's modern struggle with what the world is today and how depressing it is. I mean, I think social media plays a massive factor into it all. I think it's hard for a lot of veterans getting out because they see, all these, veteran companies, pitching XYZ with, unrealistic expectations of, get your 100% disability and walk into a 6-figure job, brother. Good.
Yeah.
And reality, maybe just get a normal job.
Yeah.
Dual nods. You don't have to.
M4s. Yeah.
Dual nods.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean.
I think some of that shit's cool. I will admit. I watch Grand Thumb videos.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
Special.
Yeah.
And it's hard for me to say as a guy, travel the world, done all this crazy shit to be like, no, man, mediocrity's okay. It is okay. I don't think I'm a special person.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just Buck. I'm the same fucking private I was when I enlisted in the Army, looking for adventure to travel the world and see some cool shit, maybe fight in a war, because that's what fucking men do. And now I'm just a dude who lives in West Virginia who just wants people to read his fucking weird ass books and fund my next dumbass adventure. I'd be the same way either way, whether I served or I didn't serve, man.
Yeah, exactly. No, I'm with you. Yep, life is an adventure. Yep, and it's funny you talk about this because I like how you with the writing the books and everything, and I remember when I was pretty young, and talking about social media, like it's that double-edged sword because if you can find the right content, man, you could launch you, like you could change your mentality and launch you into a healthy life. But most of the time, I think people see it and they're just like kind of melt you down a little bit, And I remember, and this is all prior to this is way back in the early 2000s. I remember I went to a wrestling camp, and one of the things that really stuck out with me, I was probably 13. It was a Jay Robinson wrestling camp, and he's the national champs in Minnesota and everything. And one of the things he did say was, if you think of your life as a book, when people picked it off the shelf, would they keep reading it or would they put it back? And I just remember that just always stuck with me, and not saying that everyone needs to read your story, but if someone was going to, there was, would they keep reading or would they put it back on the shelf? And that's how it is, talk about writing, and it's just one of those things where we're talking about writing books and everything, but I just remember thinking that like way back then, it's like, and it doesn't mean, like I said, people like you need to be a New York Times bestselling author of your life, but it does help keep you motivated. Are you moving to the next thing? Are you moving to your next goal? Are you accomplishing what you want to accomplish? And I just remember back then being like, oh man, I really like that quote, not saying you got to make a difference or you got to do all this crazy shit, but is it worth reading or is somebody going to put it back on the shelf? And, as an adventure seeker, like I can look up my goals from high school, and they're stupid, but there's a few in there too that are just like, holy shit, like I accomplished some of these, they're like, they're built in subconsciously to like, keep going, keep pushing yourself, go to Dubai, go do this, go do scuba diving, go climb mountains, go to war, the adventure of life. And like I said, I like what you're writing. I like what you're doing. Cause it's awesome to be able to kind of get those stories out there and how you get there. But also, though, I agree. Especially with the social media, it's really hard in this day and age navigating. And especially guys getting out. I mean, I was there when it started, so I remember getting Facebook and MySpace in 2005 and six, and and the military was on top of it too. By the way, so we lived in that generation of do not post because this will stay online for the rest of your life. Don't post stupid shit. And then, and we were old enough to know that. And also, we didn't have immediate upload from phones. So I would have to go, and my wife is 4 years younger, so she doesn't understand this. I was like, you'd go into a club or a bar and you would see lights go off because people had point and shoot cameras. And so that means that people were taking photos. And then the next morning you would go through those photos and then you would post those photos. So you would have to go through a bunch of steps before you decided to post some cringe shit online or a mistake, you know what I mean? Or something like that. Like if you watch
shit,
Yeah. If you watch The Hangover, they do that. They're like, oh my God, we got our point and shoot back. And that's the end of The Hangover, the movie came out in like 2009. And they go through it. I'm like, I told my wife, I was like, that's what you would do like every weekend, you're like, oh my God, but I agree though. I agree with you. Like guys getting out there like, oh, was my service, did I do enough? Or am I cool enough? Or, we know people in the influencer world, you're like, they're not that cool. It's actually a lot of this shit. Like, don't compare yourself to those people online.
They're wildly depressed. I know they are.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And they're doing the same struggles. It doesn't matter how much you write in your paragraphs on Instagram or, this and that, dude. It's like and again, they're going through their own struggles. And, I think the whole, not just veterans, that's just the whole generation's trying to fucking deal with that. I have a little girl, she's 3, and we're about to have our second one. But it's like, we don't know what it's going to be like in 10 years. But definitely social media is not healthy, and it's not healthy for grown adults discussing that have done, a lot in life. And you're like, oh man, social media, that kind of gets me down, like you're comparing yourself and you're an adult that has been there. You've controlled it. You understand it. You know yourself really well. Now expect a teenager to fucking navigate that world. That's insane. Like that's,
so my sister, she's 16 years old, there's a big age gap. 30, she's 16, so I have to, see what the daily life of a modern 16-year-old girl is. And it's fucking tough, man. Mm-hmm. It's fucking shitty. Yeah. Like I remember our biggest struggle in high school is like, man, I hope I don't fucking say something stupid on MySpace so I don't get my fucking ass beat, again, or like, saying someone in person and getting your ass beat. Like, man, just going to a party and seeing some dude you said something wrong to and getting your ass beat. It's just like the struggles are way different. Like she has to worry about so many other different things. And like, I couldn't imagine dealing with that, man. At 16, I was just trying to talk to chicks. That was way easier. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing.
Yeah. And I agree. And everybody says it. And we saw this right away. I mean, especially when Instagram popped up, but with Facebook, I remember because I was in the Marine Corps and I remember being wildly depressed because I came back from my first deployment. I broke up with my ex-girlfriend. Everyone's, girlfriends either cheated on them or fiancés left them, all the stereotypical stuff. But then it's like, oh, I get to see exactly what she's doing every weekend because she posts photos of it. Like that was wild, dude. It's like you talk about getting punched in the gut all the time. You know what I mean? Like I remember doing that then and be like, man, that sucks. And now it's on your phone and now you see it all the time. Like that was just because I had to log into Facebook. At least back then you could be okay, look at Facebook.
Bro, the good old days.
Yeah, I had a flip phone, and so you didn't have to check in all the time. Like now it's everyone's doing it. And I agree. It's nuts because back then, when I was in high school, none of this existed. So you could go home and you could forget about school. You could just, it's done, it's over, or you say some stupid shit, people forgot about it, or never even, you know what I mean? It's like no one knew everyone's business, like I went to a small Lutheran school, like in the middle of the city. It wasn't like in the middle of the country or anything, but it was like, and granted we were probably better than the public school, but even then we had our issues but you could at least forget about it when you went home. Guys would go, some of my closest friends would go home, they play PlayStation, and they just forget about shit, just forget about it. But now it just trails you back home, now it's like people can
everywhere.
DM you,
and then it's gonna fall into your fucking
everywhere.
job, man. It's crazy.
That was it's nuts thinking about that, because now you bring that up and people brought that out. I was like, that was a big controversy back in like the 2012s. I remember, or no, 2010s, I think. It was like early 20. They were talking about, this was jobs back. There was like an article written, and they're like, can people look at your Facebook? Can employers look at your Facebook to see the type of person you are? And that was like a big controversy, like.
And that was when you could start looking your Facebook private,
Yes, exactly. And like, dude, I remember going through that. Like, I would never post some of the shit we took photos of, and all this other stuff. And even now, like, you're like, okay, what do I post? What do I don't? But back then, though, at least you could think about it, or you could, and you knew, like the images that, and it was just like, it was a little bit less to an extent of what it is now, just because it's not in your hand, you had to.
Well, I mean, now you can see the whole war in Ukraine on fucking TikTok, dude. That's
oh my God, dude. Yeah. I mean, it's insane. Like Instagram, we knew updates when things were happening. We actually used Signal, Instagram, and Twitter in Ukraine when I went, because we knew exactly what was happening at the moment. Like, you would follow certain accounts, and then it's like, that was our open source intelligence coming in. They're like, hey, I can't remember what city it was, but I think it was Cherniv. We're like, hey, this is what's going on in Cherniv. Like, what, okay, cool. Let's cross check it with our sources. Yep, it's on the ground. We knew events within 10 minutes of when they happened. And Russian.
Well, it's kind of cool with journalism too. Like, I had a really good buddy who's a writer as well. He was going to school for journalism for his undergrad. And this was years ago. I mean, this is probably 2015, 2016. He was doing his undergrad. And he had a professor tell him, he's like, Twitter is going to kill journalism. He's like, it's too lightning media is the new trend. These days of if you want to be like a beatnik, like journalist, and like all this, like all the greats, that you look up to, you kind of have to write op-eds that actually, you have to tell you have to be a storyteller. Like, journalism as a news source is dead. Basically, the story gets out nowadays, and then it's update of constantly fact checking to see whatever they said. There's this like big interview with like Denzel Washington where he's talking about like the integrity of journalism. Like, it's not about, if you're right, it's about how quick you can get the story out there. And he hit the nail right on the head.
Yeah, exactly.
And like, that's, as a writer, that's something I have to like kind of worry about. Chat GPT, is that going to take my job? I don't think it will, because there's no soul in that writing, and that's what makes a book awesome. But for journalism, I think the industry of journalism is going to die off completely. It's too easy to pay a dude $30 in a foreign country to get him to tell you what's going on the ground. And who cares if it's right? They don't fucking care. They just need likes, views, SEOs. And that's something my little bit of shit with the journalist industry and like other magazines. That's just literally what they told me. I need SEOs. I don't care about whatever else is going on.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's that weird thing too. I mean, it's a double-edged sword, because I remember when the digital filmmaking, like I went through that kind of with filmmaking, years ago, but with YouTube, they talk about YouTube. That was a big conversation back in 2014. That's when things really started to escalate in every way. Digital cinematography, digital cinema, YouTube was really finding it had found its footing, but it's like, okay, which direction do you go? But, at the same time though, I think, their big conversation was, now everybody thinks they're a filmmaker, But at the same moment, I said, well, that means that there's way more job opportunities. And if you're good at what you do, you're gonna weed through the bullshit. You're gonna weed through the people that can't hack it. And I think that kind of with Chat GPT, I agree with you when people were like, oh, well, this is gonna take jobs. I was like, well, the shitty people, but like the real writers, the people that are really good at what they fucking do. I love Chat GPT. I love whatever, because it's a tool in my toolbox. Digital, a film camera is a tool in my toolbox. Yeah, anybody can rent it. Anybody can rent the rigs that I have, but it doesn't mean that they have the skill, and it doesn't mean that they have the drive, and it doesn't mean they have the talent, and it doesn't mean they have the experience. And I think writing's that same way. And I agree with you with journalism. I think I think the fact, like, there's no way you have someone on the ground in journalism anymore. Like, oh, we're going to send you to Nairobi, and you're going to, let's get that, Hitler's a real bad egg, let's check up on how everyone's doing, like that's over. I agree with you. But I think if you want to be a journalist, as in you want to get to the bottom of a story, There's some really good
Investigative
journalists out there.
journalism, I
Like
think it's still there.
yeah,
100%.
exactly. And I think investigative journalism, it's actually amplifying because now you can build a following. People will, I love his work. It's kind of like what Vice did with like, obviously they went to shit, but like we're trying to do that a little bit with Project Leaflet. We're trying to, we don't have much money, but we'd like to do that where it's like, we want to do videos on stuff that we like. It's a kind of a cinematic investigative journalism, combat journalism. I would love to go back and talk with the NRF in Afghanistan. Why don't we talk to the Nigerian SF that's hunting down ISIS? Let's talk to the people in Burma, and people. And it's like you can do the access. And now you use the tools in the toolbox, which are new. Yeah, are you going to be the first one on the ground? No, but if you're an investigative journalist and say you go there and cut your teeth, people will follow you and they will pay you for your opinion. Yeah, but you're right though. It's kind of like op-ed-ish more, but like. Dude, guys going into Ukraine, guys going into like some real fucking journalists that just won the Academy Award. He stayed fucking ballsy. He's in Mariupol during the siege in the beginning. I'm not saying that you're guaranteed Academy Awards, but there's a respect there, and I talk with Nick Laidlaw all the time and some of the guys. It's like, Ukraine, if you want to be a combat journalist, he's like, your bravery is as far as it'll, it's like how brave you are is how far it'll take you. Because they're like, yeah, you want to come to the front line. You might die, but you're going to gain that experience. And you can go to other places in the world. It's kind of like that adventure. Like no one's stopping you from going to Tajikistan to talk to the NRF. No one's stopping you from going to Afghanistan as a photojournalist. The Taliban might, but there's people have gone in. There's YouTubers have gone in and literally have. How
funny you are, man! You'd be surprised how far I laugh at you.
Yeah. It's like it's nuts. It's like like the British go. There's like some YouTuber travel vloggers that are like, I'm in Afghanistan like last year, and they're like, check it out, Taliban are letting me shoot machine guns for. It's like. It's like if you're willing to go do it.
That's the journalism I want, baby.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Is like you can. So I always think that the technology, I agree with you. I think a lot of that immediate fact-checking journalism is probably dead with Twitter, but the investigative journalism, you got to pivot, like I agree with you. But if you're good at what you do and you're willing to put the time in and this is what you love, you're going to rise to the top, or you're at least going to rise to where you're going to love your job. But everyone's got to go through that fucking grind, man. I think, when people kind of say that shit, they're like, yeah, like who gives like I'm living through it right now. Like you have Netflix, you have YouTube, but hey, is Hollywood dying? Kind of is. Like the big production studios, all the films are halted right now. So, because at the end of the day, if you start making shitty content, people are not going to watch it anymore. Which means that you have to be a better storyteller, which means you have to be a better filmmaker. If I'm paying $90 to go to that fucking movie theater, it better be a goddamn good movie now. Of course I saw Oppenheimer and Dune 2 because they were phenomenal. I don't go see Fall Guy. Not saying it's a bad film, but I'm going to rent it, on Thursday when it comes out on for $20 because I'd rather do that than go to the theater. Well, that movie tanked. Maybe you should make a better film. Maybe you just make. You just can't make. Yeah.
I'm tired of all these meta-ass movies. Like I'm a storyteller.
Yeah, exactly.
So like write fucking stories. I write something that's entertaining because you have to remember that I'm so tired of these fucking 3-hour long goddamn pandering ass fucking movies that is like trying to make some message. Let's just make it an escapism. That is what storytelling is. It is art is not a necessity. So if you want people to buy your art, you have to make it fucking enjoyable. When I write a short story, I want to make someone laugh. I want to make someone to enjoy what they're reading. I want to inspire maybe some young man to go do something stupid. That's what I'm doing. I'm not trying to write a fucking story that depresses the shit out of people. Have I done that before? Yes. Have I written books that are depressing? Yes. So you got to write one for you. You got to write one to fucking make people laugh. That's the balance of fucking storytelling.
Exactly.
My most recent book is way better than my first book. My first book was just wildly fucking sad and depressing, me just going through it. My second book has its moments, but honestly, it's more funny than it is sad, which I think is the good balance of it all.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with you. And Yep. And you gotta sell something that people want, and that's what it is at the end of the day, and that was always kind of a thing. And, the art house world, when I went to film school, there's two type of filmmakers. There's the art house indie people, the meta depth of meaning. And then there's the commercial guys. I clearly was a commercial guy, like I was like, I want to make Michael Bay movies. I want to make The Rock. I think Face Off was one of the best films, Con Air, and you watch them though. Yeah. It's just a phenomenal filmmaking, and whether you love it or hate it, it's highly entertaining. It's like you can clearly see the talent, the skill. Like you just watch them, you're like, God damn, these are good movies, and whether they're ridiculous plots or not, they're phenomenal movies. And I agree with you. I think, and we're seeing in the film industry, you can't put out shitty stuff anymore because people aren't going to see them anymore. And so now there's a shift, and you got to get back to, it still goes back to the best filmmakers. Well, right now, Denis Villeneuve and Nolan, Chris Nolan are the best. And so they're going to get all the money, but they're going to make the best fucking things, and you're going to go see them in the movie, and they're going to be phenomenal. And I think with like you said, with writing too, I want to read some really good shit. I want to read stuff that's going to entertain me, and I think you hit that on the head, like, you gotta make something that entertains the audience, even if it's depressing, man. Seven is not the most, uplifting film of all time, but it's goddamn good, and it's
Legends of the Fall
phenomenal.
is a great example. That was a movie and a book.
Exactly.
Actually, it's a short story. It's not very long. Legends of the Fall is only like 150 pages, period, or 100 pages. It's very short. You can do both. You can write a very fun, entertaining story and have these ups and downs of storytelling that makes a reader think. And if you could successfully make the balance of both those things, one of my favorite authors that's currently alive, he's a good friend of mine, is a guy named Douglas Hoover. Douglas Hoover, he's a Marine vet. He's a 1.9 or 2.9. I don't know. I'm going to fuck that up. Whatever. He got out of the Marine Corps in like 2012, did his own thing. But now he writes just pure fiction books, and they're so fun. They're so entertaining, but they have these depths. And he's talking about some really deep and interesting concepts. But then it's like, and then anyways, now we're looking for treasure. And I'm like, that's cool. That's entertaining. And if you can do that successfully, then you're off to the fucking races. And I think that's a big problem with most of, artists and writers and everything else. A lot of veteran authors, they're going to get their rabbit hole themselves in these war bad, make me sad story that's been told 1,000 fucking times. It's not fucking entertaining, man. I don't want to be depressed. I don't need to read a self-help book on fucking discipline either. You can give me a lesson on discipline through fiction. Crazy fucking concept.
Yep.
Look at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, that's the people that really succeed and are that are going to elevate themselves. And in the same way in filmmaking, man, going through film school, I made this. I made the fun action films. Obviously they sucked, because there's film school, but I remember doing it, and I made this one. And my professor came up to me, he's like, I really like your indie. And I was like, why? He goes, well, because typically it's always the meta indie depressing lesbian love story that goes nowhere, or some stupid shit, or it's super depressing stuff because they're all art house kids. Well, I came through and I was like, all right, cool. Well, this chick she's like a spy. She gets the shit kicked out of her. And then she comes back and kills everybody. It's really fun and entertaining. That's like the gist of the short film.
Yeah.
And so I have my character come back. She takes a chainsaw and starts going to town on the guy that was like the CIA blacks, whatever, just fun shit. And he was like, I really enjoyed that. I was like, yeah. He's like, thanks. Yeah. And he goes, oh yeah, I really enjoyed that. I was like, oh, why? And he's like, well, because, she just didn't die at the end. Cause that's what they do. They're like, oh, it's deep. It's meaning, oh, and then she dies, or, oh, she gets raped and then she dies. And then just think about that. And that was the slew of a lot of those art house films, because it was the art house kids going through. And,
I'm an art house nerd too. I like some real art house pieces, but fuck, man, I like some dumb, I like some stupid fiction, man. And you have it's the balance, the balance of art, my man.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah, it is. Exactly. He sees that all the time. They think that they're different, and they're not. It's all the same. Where it's but making something good and entertaining is the challenge. Yeah, and that's what I'm saying is and that's what I think. Having people, that's more challenging. I think when people try to you see something that's different, they're like, oh, it's different, it's edgy. It's like, no, it's just not good. Like if you're different and edgy, but people like your stuff in the mainstream, that's a talent. And I hate to say that, but sometimes because that's going to elevate you. But like you can't make a shitty movie and be like, well, that's my vision. I'm edgy and I'm blah 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 blah. And you just don't get it, man. It's like, no, dude, like you're just not good at what you do. And I would say to be at the top, that's the hardest fucking place to be. Like that's hard, like it's hard to write those novels, or it's hard to make those films, because they're going to pick the best of the best, man. It's going to sell. It's going to make money. You got to fucking fight tooth and nail for every scene. And then you got to make the film good. It's like winning the lottery 10 times over to make a film, a successful film. Same with writing a book, I'm sure. Like find your audience, find that niche, or not niche, but like these are good fucking movies, or this is a great fucking book, dude. I read a lot. This is years ago when I was going through my bachelor's degree. I was in intelligence studies. So I was reading a ton of books and a lot of intel books, but then just in general, as I was backpacking and traveling. And Dan Brown, man, Dan Brown, his books,
Dude,
like
Dan
the
Brown,
Da Vinci Code and and he's like the Michael Bay of like fucking books, like you read, like his chapter is literally like 2 paragraphs, and you can tell it's a scene. It's like a scene because it's the way you read it, and then just like the way the characters act and talk, and they move on to the next thing. But they're fucking entertaining, man. And he was selling shitloads of books, and I read all of his books, and they entertain you, and you read some of them, you're like, oh, that's a little bit far fetched, but it keeps you engaged.
Dollars. Because Jerry Bruckheimer makes fucking movies that people want to see.
Exactly.
The same
yes,
thing
dude. Oh, yeah.
Writing.
Yeah, exactly.
Every book I write, or is it going to be something that I want to like sell to the masses and make a good check? No, dude. My most recent book is my fun, enjoyable, little art house balance book. My next book is just going to be pure fun and adventure that I'm going to write. And then the book after that is going to be a little bit more serious undertones. My buddy Doug, I know I talk about him a lot. He's a great guy. He told me this. He goes, you write one for you write one to fucking sell, because at the end of the day, it's your fucking job. And you got to make a living, brother.
Yeah. You got to pay the bills. Same with us. Filmmaking's the same thing. You take a commercial gig, you do your art house gig or whatever.
It's an industry that
passion
you have to like help each other out,
Exactly. Hell
it's the same thing.
All right, man. This was
the boots.
Okay, go ahead.
Here.
Yeah, same.
Oh no, I gotta go.
But go ahead. Oh, okay. All right, well, same thing. All right, man. Well, this is great having you on. Where can people find you? Where can they get your books?
Okay, my books are sold everywhere because I got a sweet ass publishing deal from Dead Reckoning Collective. I actually got a Library of Congress number. That's badass. But I'm on Instagram as Jess Buck. Nice. I think I'm on Twitter too. You just look at me up there. Google William Bolyard, and go buy my new book. It'll be out May 24th. It's wildly okay. And that's about it.
Awesome, bro. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, anytime. I wish I would have told more travel stories, but whatever. We'll do that another time.
We'll do it again. All right. Take care.